Welcome to the realest podcast you'll ever listen to. I'm LT.
I'm Kiki.
And we're here to talk blunt.
Black ladies, unequivocally North Tulsa. Let's talk blunt talk.
Kiki, you ready to talk blunt?
Yeah, LT, let's talk blunt.
What are we going to talk about today?
Today we're going to talk about life decisions. Those decisions in life, almost like a game day decision where we decide to do something that can change the trajectory of what we're on. It takes us in a different path, good or bad. But at the time, we feel like it's the best decision. So life decisions that have kind of altered the way things have taken place in our life. Do you have anything like that decisions you've made or not made that you feel have altered things in your life?
I feel like there are times in my life that I've had to make decisions that I really needed to stop and think through. A good example is, and of course, you know, my personality, I analyze everything, but a great decision is purchasing a home.
That's a life decision.
It's a life decision. And it's something we shouldn't take lightly. Not only just, first of all, if we're ready to purchase a home, what is your budget to purchase it? A lot of times we make decisions that put us in far over our head, you know, and so we stretch ourselves, you know, we're living in a day and time where we all want to live like the Joneses. And so for me, it was about, at the point in my life when, first of all, was I going to be ready? You know, I used the example of, I know, I see it today. A lot of people, they're buying homes and they're dating. For me, that wasn't something I wanted to do. And that's one of the things that took me so long to buy a home, because I wanted to make sure that we actually had made a full commitment to each other, that we were married, we had the budget to do it, and that we were realistic about what we can afford. I believe it's okay to have starter homes and to then go back when you're at a different place in life and get the next house and not be forced into getting houses because all of your friends have a certain status of house or all of your coworkers have a certain status of house. So I think you have to weigh your consequences. And so, yes, you could jump out there and buy whatever home you want to buy. But are you going to potentially end up in a situation where, one, you're divorced, or maybe you didn't ever even get married, so you separate, and then you're trying to figure out how to divide that, or you're left with paying a house payment that you can no longer afford because you weren't ready for that decision. So I think it's important to really think through that. That's one that comes for me that I took really, really to heart. And sometimes we are at a point where we're thinking about purchasing a new home. And I think back like, okay, should we have just got this type of home then? And I go back to, no, I think we made the right decision at that time because that's where we were in life. And then later where we are now, we can move forward with the next decision.
Yeah. And I think to unpack some of that for me, there's a lot of decision making in that statement you just made. There was one decision about making a life decision to buy a house.
Right.
Yes. Second is making a decision to be committed to buy a house to either the person or individuals that you are choosing to purchase that house with. I personally don't feel like you need to be married to purchase a house. I think that if you have two people who have come together and said, hey, we're at that point in our relationship where we want to take this a step further. And if that step further in that life decision or game day decision is purchasing a house, so be it. That's just my opinion.
I agree with that. But before we go there, I want to go back to what you just said a second, though, because yes, for me, it's about the marriage piece. I went through the life of not something that I am proud of or that I probably would choose to do it differently, but I lived with those situations of living with someone before I was married. So I can truly say for me, I needed to know that we were married and we were committed. And so I hear you when you say it's not about being married. But here's where I would challenge, because I agree, maybe it's not about being married because maybe that's not for you. What I do think, though, that you need to make sure of when you're weighing those consequences, are you okay not being married? Because I see several people that make decisions to purchase a house, but they're still waiting. It's not that they've decided that they're not going to get married or they don't want to get married. Because there are people in their life that's like, I don't want to marry again.
Right.
But I'll make a purchase, for whatever reason they've decided they don't want to do that. That's different because I don't want to be married. We want to live like this, and we're both okay with that. But I'm not going to go make a purchase of a house with you when I'm still desiring to be married and you're choosing not to, because that puts us in a situation for if that conflict doesn't get resolved,
Right.
then now we've got this debt that we've got to figure out
Right. Right.
how to undo. So once again, it's the decision. Are you really okay with that? Or are you going into it hoping that something else comes down, hoping that that changes the decision?
When you talk about that, I think sometimes we put, what is the saying, the buggy before the horse,
And the horse before the buggy.
Yeah. So I think there's that element of, are we ready for that life decision? Have we done our homework? Like, for example, one of the things we didn't necessarily do in an order, but when we started talking about buying a house, I was like, okay, well, yeah, I got some stuff on my credit I need to handle, or I got some stuff that I need to, look into. My husband had to look into some stuff, but we had that open conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times when you start talking about life decisions and being in committed relationships or relationships in general, are you having the blunt conversation about what is it going to take for us to get into this home? And financially, are you prepared? Are we prepared to make this purchase?
Right.
And so I think that's a conversation that has to be had about life decisions. Same can go with children.
Right.
This was a conversation, for me, a life decision was I wanted children before my husband did. So we waited 5 years. And it was a long 5 years. I mean, it was one of those kind of like, okay, when the time comes, it comes. But I think to your point earlier, two people had to be on the same page.
Correct.
I actually had people telling me, girl, just get pregnant. He'll be okay. No, ma'am. That's not an option for me. Because I did not want to get pregnant and him not be ready. Or, accidentally get pregnant and then us be in conflict the whole time I was in, having a baby or something. I just think I had to respect his boundary,
I think that's a great point because I have seen scenarios like that where the female wants the child and the husband is not quite ready. And then you rush that and you go ahead and have those kids. And then when you get into it, you're the one that's doing all the care of the kids and running them here and running them there. And then you start to resent the relationship you're in and frustrated with, why isn't he helping? Well, he told you he wasn't ready for a child and you chose to go ahead and move forward with it. So I think that's a great example of a decision, a life decision that you have to be on one accord with and make sure, and of course, when you start talking about having kids, that can go a whole bunch of different ways because we can get into situations of having kids thinking that's going to change a relationship and it doesn't. And those are those life decisions that you really have to think through. And when we're talking about life decisions, I think the key piece is not even just about, is it right for you? Who else does it impact?
That's true.
What are the consequences of those decisions? We make decisions a lot of times that is going to impact children. It's going to impact other family members. And so when you're making life decisions, we need to think about yes, it may be okay for me, but am I causing pain or heartache or hardship for somebody else?
Well, I think people would argue that it's my decision. And I look at, maybe a single male or female who believes, what, right now it's time for me to settle down. I want to have a baby. Either be surrogate or either it be through, other reproductive type opportunities. And I think that you're talking about repercussions of what it has to other people. I do think people should be able to make a decision and not be judged based on that decision.
Okay, so here's where I struggle. And I know this is not necessarily connected to this life decision that we've been talking about, but you say, okay, people feel like it's my decision, I should be able to make that. Well, I feel like anytime, I'm going to go old school on you, I was raised with, if you old enough to make the decision, you better be old enough to own the decision.
Right.
So that's fine that you make a decision, because it's yours to make, but then your poor planning or poor decision making shouldn't impact my
Being
life.
a single person doesn't mean you plan poorly.
So I didn't say anything about a single person.
Okay.
My point was, like I said, it's not necessarily about the topic we're talking about. I'm just saying, when people make the comment, well, it's my decision to make.
Gotcha.
You need to be able to own your decision that you make.
Gotcha.
Don't make a decision and then it become my problem. So you can take that back to kids, okay? If I've decided I'm ready to have kids, I need to be able to raise those kids. I need to, once again, and I'm not even necessarily saying I totally agree with all of this, but old school very much was, you needed to be responsible for your kids. Today we got grandparents raising kids.
You had grandparents raising kids back then, and we just didn't verbalize it. I mean, yes,
they helped.
No, they raised. Because just like now in today's society, where a young person gets into a situation where, I remember I had family members who started having babies at 18, weren't ready.
Mm-hmm.
My mom chipped in, and in certain cases took children and raised them up while things were being figured out. So I do think those scenarios are playing out. Old school, we didn't talk about it. New school, we talk about it more.
Maybe
it's more mainstream.
You might be right.
Because we didn't talk about teenage pregnancy in the 80s. It was happening rapidly all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
People were having babies at 12, 13, 14.
Yes, I would agree.
We had
I would agree.
pregnancy schools where you shipped off the young woman and kind of shamed her into, we're going to let you graduate, but we need you to go to school over here and not go to school over here. We don't do that.
No, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
So I think it happened during our time. I think now, though, with social media and the way people are able to verbalize what's going on and sharing or oversharing their lives, it's more mainstream when things happen and people are more verbal about, well, hey, I decided to make this decision, or hey, I decided to do this. Back in the day, your mama was like, don't tell nobody what's going on in my house.
Right.
And we don't necessarily have control over that anymore.
Yeah, but I also think that I want to be careful that we separate a couple of things, because once again, not condoning it at all, but a teen pregnancy is very different.
True. And I brought that up.
Than adults.
True.
Who decide they're going to make decisions
to have
and then leave that. Right. Because
Agree.
You think as a child, you act as a child. When you're a child, you do childish things.
Right.
When you become adult, you need to be adult. Now, and let's be clear, we're talking about making life decisions. Age doesn't necessarily equal it. People think, oh, I'm 18, I'm grown.
Technically you are.
But are you?
Technically you are.
But are you?
I'm just saying.
And that's the part you need to think about.
You buy cigarettes, you just can't drink, right?
That's the part you need to think about, though, when you start talking about it's my life and I can make my own decisions.
I do. And as a mother of a almost 18-year-old and a 20-year-old and a 20-something-year-old, you have to give your children space to own the consequences that they make in their life. I just don't think.
Absolutely.
As parents, I think sometimes we want to bail.
Well, we learn from them.
We do learn a lot from them. But I think we have a tendency to project ourselves on our children. Well, if you make this decision, it's going to look bad on me. Or we raised you better than that. At the end of the day, it's their life.
Right.
And that life decision that they make, be it to leave school, be it to purchase a car, be it to get married at 18, that's their life decision. And we have to, as parents, and I'm talking to myself here, as parents, I need to be able to understand that's not my decision.
Right.
That's their life and that's their decision.
Absolutely.
And I will admit to wanting to rear my child because I want to save them. We want to save our children from hurt and harm, but that's not always our position to play.
And and I agree with you. My thing was though, are they really going at 18? I kind of laughed when you talked about that because, LT's daughter thought she wanted to go to school in Kansas. I do not know why, because this is a Sooner Nation in our home. And so, what? You're going to go to school in Kansas? You're going to go to Wildcat Country? I'm just not feeling that. And I remember my husband going, she has lost her mind. She is not going to no K-State. She is not going that far. And I kept saying to him, it's okay. Just calm down. Just don't. If you tell her right now that she can't, that's going to make her want to do it more.
Right.
Just let it go. And of course, before she made the final decision, she came to her senses and she was like, I think I might want to go to UCO. And I was like, see, honey, you just have to let her get there. However, about, I would say, a couple of years in, after she had lost a few cell phones and done a few things that parents had to come to the rescue, she was kind of like, I don't think I could have made it all the way over at K-State. You think? She could, and now don't get me wrong, some people could have. She wasn't one of them, and so, but she had to get there, to your point, and make that decision on her own. But that could have been devastating. But what's an example for you?
Another life decision for me, and while it may not be that big of a decision for other people, was purchasing a dog. Like, including a fur baby, I had no idea. Like, I had just lost a parent. And my children have been asking for a furry animal, and I'm a dog person. So, gosh, it took me probably 3 years for me to kind of like get to the point where I can okay, I consider being a fur mom. But what I didn't understand, and my husband kept telling me, because he grew up with in a small zoo. His mother had all kind of animals around. And what I wasn't prepared for was the vet bills.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared for the traveling and having to find somewhere to put your pet when you was, all the stuff that comes along with. I just did not have a clue. My dog, when we went, I don't think I knew I wanted him to be a rescue. We went, he was shiny, he was new, he was cute, he was doing his little show pony thing, $17.50 was the cost. I'm thinking I can get a dog for less than $20 bucks.
Should have been your first clue. Should have been your first clue.
Get him home. He limping. He got coughing. He this, he that. I'm taking him to the vet every day, and life consequences. $500 later, he healthy as all get out. But it's like those were the things I didn't think about. I didn't think about, him marking his territory all over the house, over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. But it was a life decision, and I was not going to take my dog back, because the lady at the shelter, when I called her, she was like, well, if it gets too much, you can always bring him back. I'm like, no, I'm committed.
Right.
He's our dog. He's now a part of our family. So that's a life decision. I mean, I think people see pets as a small decision, but I beg to differ. I think pets are a huge decision. They're a very huge expense.
They are. They're right there with kids.
They aren't
prepared for.
Oh my goodness! I have 2 now. Yeah. Both are rescues. One is a little bit bossy, and I contemplated having another, especially after the other one came. But she came from a different background, and one of my friends whose spouse is a police officer actually was like, "This is a big good addition." She biting everybody in the. She just walking around biting everybody on the ankles first couple of weeks. Every time you look at her, and it's like, what did I do? So I'm looking for Caesar. Come please help me, the dog charmer. But it just again, another life decision where I made the decision to introduce another fur animal into my life. And she literally is biting everybody.
And my decision is to play with the neighbors.
Yeah.
Cute little dog that's behind me. And not on one of my own. I'm okay with it.
With it. I got to. We'll see what happens after that. Yeah. What are some other life decisions that you think?
I think jobs. changing jobs, career decisions, those are big decisions. And I've seen people make career changes or even job changes through emotions. And I think you have to be very careful with that. I think you really need to, first of all, I don't think we should make any decisions out of emotions when we've got strong emotions. I think we have to step back and say, okay, is this just a story I'm telling myself today? Or is this real? Because trust me, there are days I tell myself stories and I get myself all worked up because I have decided that I have built the story in my head of where I think we are, where I think I am. And thank God there are times that I am convicted the next day and say, and are shown that, you know what, that's just your emotions. That's just your emotions. That's the enemy. And that really isn't the way it is. And so I think we have to be very careful in our decisions making about our jobs and in our careers. The grass is not always greener on the other side of the fence. And sometimes the grass is green on the other side of the fence. But we need to make sure that the grass is green on the other side of the fence. We need to make sure that it is going to fulfill us. And the other thing I would say is while we're talking about jobs, I've never been a believer of I'm not changing jobs for, another 50 cents, another dollar,
Yeah.
because you might there may be a reason why they're paying that dollar more, even that $2 more. So you need to be making a decision. You need to understand the decision, the full ramifications. Does that new job or career have the benefits you're looking for? Is it going to fit your lifestyle? More than anything, is it fulfilling?
Yeah. And see, I'm going to disagree with you, of course, blunt talk. While structured, have made several decisions from an emotional standpoint. They can be small. I'm going to run this light because I'm trying to get where I'm going. I'm confessing. I'm not saying the light is red. It's red. It's yellow. That's a decision. That's a life decision. I understand. I'm not saying go out there and run red and yellow lights. I'm just saying I've done that. And I've been the one in court disputing that I did not run that light. And when they give me my driver's license and say, ma'am, is that your car? Yes, it is, sir. Okay, I need you to go over there and pay that fine. The consequence of me running that light is me paying a fine. And at one point, you have to deal with the consequence of if I do something out of emotion. If it comes out good, great. If it comes out bad, okay, either way, that consequence could be good or bad. But for me to say that I haven't made decisions, jobs, yes, I've made them out of emotion. Driving, I made out of emotion. I am a structured emotional person. I have also stopped, did some critical thinking, pros and cons. I've done all that, but at the end of the day, I'm a gut person.
Right.
And it's walking down a corner in a dark alley. Okay, Kim, we making this journey down this dark alley. We're going to turn around and keep going. If my gut say turn around, guess what? I'm turning around.
Yeah.
So,
and you're right. And I think a lot of that comes into personality types where you're more apt to make a decision out of emotions, where I'm more apt to think about it and to draw it out a little bit longer. And I think, and for me, a lot of that has come with age too. I used to be a lot quicker to do things faster in emotions than I am today at my age, because you get older and you get wiser. But when you make those emotional decisions, are you prepared to own them?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I think that's the difference. Life decisions, you need to be prepared to own it. Because, when you run that red light,
I got my ticket and I paid for it.
That's right. And ain't no need of talking about.
I'm still going to talk about it.
Ain't no need of talking about.
I don't think that's me.
Okay. Yeah. Well, is it the judge's fault that you got the ticket?
I said it was mine.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'm not going to judge. Because at the end of the day, in this particular situation, I really thought I had stopped at the light.
Right.
It was a roll and stop, which I still don't understand, a roll and stop. If you got stop on the word, I may have rolled, but I stopped. But he called it a rolling stop. So there you go. I got it.
And I think those are ones that are more debatable. But let's go to I'm driving without a license.
Okay.
That's a decision.
That is a decision.
Yeah. And does that decision impact other people? And if it does, I mean, those are things we need to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's no point in me being upset with everybody else because I made a decision to get in that vehicle without license or with suspended license or whatever I did. And now I've got these fines to pay.
And that could be
I got this one.
That could be also known as cause and effect, where you put something in motion and the outcome or effect of that emotion is you get a warrant or you have to go to jail and appear.
Consequences for your actions.
Right. But it doesn't mean that as a society we don't have empathy. And then we can go down that road of the legalities and how our system is set up to kind of, once you are in that system, it's hard to get out. It's trapping, in my opinion. It can be trapping.
And I would agree with you there. Here's where I always go, and I already know that people are not, I'm going to get lit up over this and people are not going to like this. They're two separate issues. The system may be, but that doesn't negate the fact that I made a decision. I knew what the decision was. Mm-hmm. And I also should have known the consequences and whom all my decision might impact.
You got to make all that when you're in the car. I mean, that's a lot to come through. You asking for a lot. You asking me to think about a lot. And I'm not saying not to do that. I'm just saying we need to be able to empathize that not everyone is at the same point. And I'm not making excuses for people. I'm simply saying meeting people where they are. If you have a suspended license and you get a call from the school and says your child has a 100-degree fever, you need to come pick that child up. You call your circle and no one can go and pick that child up. You are now on the road going to get your sick child. And that could be an extreme situation, but those are the life things that happen when we make these life decisions. It's not black and white. It's not, I have a suspended license, so I can't drive. No, if you have a sick child or you have to go get groceries for your kids, I have a suspended license and I'm going to do what I need to do to take care of my family.
Yeah, but I think sometimes we take things in much more circles. Once again, I think when you start to pull back the layers, it all comes back to decisions that we decided.
It comes back, but I think our lawmakers need to also look at how government IDs work, how we are sometimes with those life decisions, having a government ID can sometimes be a barrier. Mm-hmm. For healthcare, it could be a barrier for different things. And I think we really need to revisit as a country the need for certain things in order to receive certain services or in order to be adjudicated from certain things. Because I think we can do better. Right. We know more now. We have more access to technology, resources that we shouldn't have to be holding people hostage for certain things. Yes, they made a mistake. Yes, they need to cause and effect, take responsibility for their consequences. But how can we look at our system differently to be a part of the solution and not seem to be a part of the problem?
And I totally agree with you. Totally agree. Everything that you just said, I agree with. And I think those are things that we should be mindful of from day to day. Like you said, a lot of times we talk about it, but we don't act on it, So those are things that we need to be acting on as a society. We need to be concerned about. Once again, I think we have to separate those things versus life decisions and what decisions that I made that led to where I am right now.
We can talk about that a lot. Blunt talk. I'm curious if you have life decisions that you've made, you want to discuss or you want to discuss them with us. Let us know, drop in our social media pages and let us know, because I think this conversation can get a little deeper and go a little further when you start to peel back layers and look at situations where we've made life decisions and the outcomes were not what we thought they would be.
And I think one of the things I think that you brought up that I'd love to visit in a future segment is around really what you're talking about is social determinants of health and how society has set us up and what can we do about it as a country. So I think that's really where you're going. And there are times we need to meet people where they are and understand what are resources to help people who have now found themselves because I made a life decision and it's led me here. So now how do I get out of that decision? And that's where understanding resources and making sure that we don't have people that's forced to make a decision between paying a bill or being able to feed my child. And so that's a conversation I would love to have, because sometimes when you've made life decisions, then you find yourself in that vicious cycle of now, how do I get out of it?
Right.
And I think that's what people need to understand, because that plays into, because I don't think a life decision has to define us.
It does not.
It's what do we do once we found ourselves there? And that's the next part of where I think you're going to. How do I now get out of where I found myself so that I don't keep making wrong decisions to end up in a spiraling event and I'm just going in a hamster wheel?
Or how do I keep a good life decision going and have it impact other people in my life in a positive way?
Oh, absolutely. Because that's the whole other
is, doing those good things and giving back and paying forward what I have done, what I've been able to be a part of or privileged to have happen with me. How do I pay that forward? And the other one, like you just said, how do I not get caught up in a vicious cycle of one decision that now is having an interpretation of an impact on every, aspects of life that I didn't anticipate. So making those life decisions, understanding how that impacts us, and being able to talk more in the future about how life decisions impact what we do.
Absolutely. Let us know what you would like for us to visit, and I think it's a wrap, Kiki.
Blunt Talk.